My name is Claire Reynolds, and right now, I'm sitting in the middle of my Manhattan design studio, sunlight spilling across bolts of silk, satin, and chiffon like liquid gold. My fingertips glide over a half-finished evening gown on the mannequin, feeling the cool, smooth fabric that still smells faintly of lavender from the warehouse. On the desk beside me, a freshly printed copy of Vogue rests open. Page 37. There it is. My dress, my handmade dress, framed in glossy perfection, draped over a model whose name I've heard 1,000 times. The caption reads, "A Claire Reynolds original, redefining American elegance." I smile, but it's the quiet kind. The kind you wear when your heart is dancing, but your mind remembers every bruise it took to get here. My phone buzzes. I glance at the screen, an Instagram tag. My thumb hesitates before opening it. It's a photo. A grainy, 10-year-old snapshot from my high school prom. There I am, 17, in that dress, the one I made with trembling hands and secondhand fabric. The caption? "Remember when she thought she was a designer?" Face with tears of joy. The account belongs to someone I haven't spoken to since graduation. My chest tightens, not from shame, but from the strange cocktail of hurt and pride that comes with surviving something ugly. I lean back in my chair, my eyes drifting to the skyline beyond the window. They think I've forgotten. I haven't. It was spring in Maplewood, Ohio, the kind of small town where Friday night football games were front-page news and everyone's business traveled faster than the school bell. I was 17, and the prom was supposed to be the night you felt beautiful. I couldn't afford the glittering dresses in the shop windows downtown, the ones with price tags that could pay our electric bill twice over. Mom worked double shifts at the diner, and Dad, well, he hadn't been around for years. So, I decided to make my own dress. Grandma Evelyn, my anchor in a storm I didn't yet know I was sailing, pulled out her old Singer sewing machine from the closet. The metal was scratched, the pedal creaked, but it purred like a cat when I pressed it down. She handed me her silver thimble, dented on one side, warm from her palm. "If you're going to stitch your dreams into something, Claire Bear," she said, "you better do it with your whole heart." I spent nights hunched over fabric from the clearance bin, piecing together soft champagne satin with lace that frayed at the edges. My fingers ached, my back throbbed, but with every stitch, the dress began to breathe. When the night of the prom came, I walked into the gym with my chin high, the skirt swaying around my ankles like a whisper. For the first few moments, I thought maybe I'd pulled it off. Then came the snickers. First from the table near the punch bowl, Lindsay Price, queen of perfectly straightened hair, leaned toward her friends, her lips curling. Someone else lifted their phone, and I knew they were snapping pictures. "Looks like she found her dress in the Goodwill dumpster," a voice hissed behind me. "No, I think my grandma's curtains went missing last week," another laughed. Every laugh felt like a needle through my skin. I gripped the skirt, my palms damp, forcing myself not to run. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. But Grandma's words pulsed in my ears. "Whole heart, Claire Bear." So I stood there, dancing when I could, smiling when my chest wanted to cave in, determined to let them see my dress, not my hurt. But by the end of the night, the photos had already made their way online. When I got home, I locked the dress away in the back of my closet. I told myself it was the last time I'd ever put my heart on display like that. Except deep down, I knew it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The Monday after prom, the photos were everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, even someone's Snapchat story with a glittery caption that read, #curtainchic. I deleted my own accounts for a while. But the dress, I couldn't throw it away. I folded it carefully, wrapped it in tissue paper, and placed it in a shoebox under my bed. Not to hide it, but to protect it. Graduation came, and with it, the chance to leave Maplewood. I packed 2 suitcases, my sewing machine, and Grandma's thimble, heading to Chicago for community college. My major? I told people it was general studies. The truth was, every free moment went into sketching, sewing, and learning from YouTube tutorials until my eyes stung. Money was tight. I worked as a cashier at a fabric store, where my employee discount became my survival tool. That's where I met Margaret Cole, a retired fashion buyer with eyes sharp enough to spot a crooked hem from across the room. She'd come in every Thursday for buttons or ribbon, and one day she noticed me sketching between customers. "You've got a good hand," she said, flipping through my notepad. "Too good to waste on doodles." Margaret became my unofficial mentor. She taught me about textiles, pattern grading, and the subtle language of design, how the right fabric could whisper or scream, how a seam could guide the eye like a sentence guides the reader. But talent didn't pay rent. I took odd jobs, altering bridesmaids' dresses in cramped apartments, repairing torn uniforms for restaurant staff, even hemming jeans for college students. Every dollar went into better tools, better fabric, better craft. My first real break came from Etsy. I posted a photo of a soft blush wrap dress I'd made from leftover fabric. It sold within a week to a customer in Seattle who left a glowing review. That review led to another order, and then another. Slowly, my living room turned into a sewing studio, the hum of my machine filling the nights while the city slept. There were still moments of doubt. Nights when my fingers bled from pinpricks, when I stared at my bank balance and wondered if I was chasing a dream that had no finish line. But each time, I thought of 17-year-old me, standing in that gym, holding her head high while the laughter burned in her ears. 2 years later, I launched my own label, Reynolds & Company, from a rented loft in Brooklyn. I didn't tell anyone back home. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted my work to speak before my words did. My Instagram feed was clean, curated, no boasts, no loud announcements. Just dresses, captured in soft light, with captions that spoke of craft and care. And then, one late autumn afternoon, Vogue reached out. They wanted one of my gowns for a winter editorial. I didn't tell Grandma right away. I just worked, pouring everything into that piece. Every stitch straight, every seam pressed crisp, the lining smooth as glass. When the magazine finally arrived, I held it in my hands and thought, maybe now it's time for Maplewood to see me again. The Maplewood High 10-year reunion invite arrived in my inbox with a cheerful subject line. "Come back and see how far we've all come." I stared at it for a long time, my cursor hovering over delete. But something in me whispered, "Go." The night of the reunion, I drove past the same brick buildings, the gas station that still displayed free coffee on Fridays, and the town square strung with fairy lights. I pulled up to the event hall in a deep emerald dress of my own making, silk that caught the light like water, with a subtle train that whispered across the floor. The neckline was clean, the sleeves draped, a design that said I know who I am without a single word. Inside, the chatter stopped for a fraction of a second when I walked in. I could feel eyes flicker toward me, lingering a little too long. "Claire? Wow, you look different," said Lindsay Price, the same one who'd called my prom dress a dumpster find. She was wearing something sequined and loud, but it didn't hide the twitch in her smile. I smiled back. "Hi, Lindsay." People mingled, swapping stories about jobs, marriages, kids. I stayed by the side table, sipping sparkling water, letting the night unfold. That's when I saw Eric Dawson, the class clown who'd made the grandma's curtains joke. He was holding the reunion yearbook, and there, taped inside, was a photocopy of my prom photo. "Remember this?" He laughed to someone beside him. I walked over, calm as a still pond. "Oh, I remember," I said, my voice even. Then, reaching into my clutch, I pulled out the current issue of Vogue and set it gently on the table. My dress, my original, graced the glossy page, the model poised like royalty. Lindsay's eyes widened. Eric blinked twice. "Wait, you made this?" "Yes," I said, tilting my head slightly. "And the label behind it?"
"Mine."
"Reynolds and Company." There was a pause, the kind that makes the air feel thick. Then came the questions. "How did you get in Vogue? Where's your studio? Do you live in New York now?" I answered each one with quiet precision, not bragging, just laying down the facts like fabric on a cutting table. I told them about the Brooklyn loft, my team of 5 seamstresses, the bridal line launching next spring. The same people who'd once smirked now leaned closer, nodding, pretending they'd always known I had it in me. But I could see it, the disbelief, the flicker of shame. At one point, Lindsay touched my arm. Claire, I'm sorry for, back then. I gave her a small smile. It's all right. Sometimes people can't see beauty unless someone else tells them it's there. By the end of the night, I slipped the magazine into my bag, feeling no need to leave it behind as proof. The point had been made. As I stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around me like silk. The stars over Maplewood hadn't changed, but I had. The girl in the prom dress had sewn her way into a life no one here had imagined for her, not even herself, once upon a time. And now they knew. 2 weeks after the reunion, my inbox started to fill. First came Lindsay's email. She wanted a custom gown for her sister's wedding. Something elegant but affordable, since friends and all. Then Eric messaged me on Facebook. His cousin was starting a clothing line and could use some insider tips. Even a few quieter voices from my past, girls who had laughed but never said the words out loud, reached out, suddenly warm and complimentary. I didn't respond right away. I let their messages sit, the way fabric rests before you cut it, giving the fibers time to settle. When I finally replied, I set my terms. To Lindsay, I wrote, I can create something for your sister if we agree on my standard rates. And there's one more thing. I'd like you to write a letter to my interns, sharing what you learned about kindness after high school. They're young women starting out, and hearing from you could mean something. To Eric, I said, advice is free. But I'll only give it if your cousin agrees to mentor 2 young designers from underrepresented backgrounds for a full year. Pay it forward. That's the only price I charge. Some didn't reply. Some did, though their words were slower, heavier, as if they'd realized this wasn't the free pass they expected. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. A rethreading of patterns that had gone wrong years ago. I wasn't the same girl who'd stood in that gym, raw and unprotected. I understood now that power wasn't in proving people wrong. It was in deciding how, and if, they got to be part of your world. In the weeks that followed, I received proof that some of them were taking it seriously. Lindsay's letter arrived, handwritten, with a small sketch her niece had drawn of a pretty dress lady. Eric sent me screenshots of his cousin's mentorship program application, complete with the names of 2 designers who would benefit. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't redemption in full. But it was movement. One afternoon, I sat in my studio with Grandma Evelyn, now in her late 70s, sipping tea while she traced the seams of a new gown I was finishing. You always had it in you, she said softly, adjusting her glasses. They just couldn't see it yet. I thought about that, about how sometimes the world won't see your worth until you make it impossible to ignore. And now it was impossible. Spring arrived in New York with its usual flair, tulips blooming along the park, sunlight glinting off glass towers, and the city's constant hum outside my studio windows. On my cutting table sat a half-finished gown for a high-profile gala. Beside it, Grandma's silver thimble, dented on one side, caught the light. I still used it for every piece, no matter how big the client. My phone buzzed, a notification from Lindsay's sister. A photo of her wedding day. She stood smiling in the custom gown I'd made, the fabric catching the wind just so, her caption reading, designed by the incredible Claire Reynolds, the most talented, kind-hearted woman I've met. Not long after, Eric sent a short message. The mentorship started. Thank you for pushing me to do the right thing. It wasn't about their gratitude, though it was nice to see. It was about the ripple. The idea that a single moment of standing tall could alter the current of someone else's life. Late that evening, I pulled the old prom dress from its tissue paper cocoon. The satin was softer now, the lace a little yellowed, but the stitches held, tight, defiant. I ran my fingers along the hem and smiled. Back then, I'd thought it was just a dress. But now I knew it was the first blueprint of the life I'd built. Every seam was a choice, every thread a refusal to let shame win. I hung it carefully in my studio, framed behind glass. Not to forget the hurt, but to remember the turning point. As I locked up for the night, I glanced at the city beyond the windows. The same girl who once trembled under a gym's fluorescent lights now stood here, not just seen, but sought after. And maybe that's the quiet truth of it all. We don't always get to choose how the world first sees us, but we do get to decide how they'll remember us. Turns out, stitches can hold more than fabric, they can hold a whole life together.